Hello there, I'm David Paton from the group Pilot, and I am the next guest On Screen and Beyond.
On Screen and Beyond, an inside look into the entertainment world featuring interviews with people from the movie, TV, and music industry, news on upcoming TV and DVD releases, and the rumor mill. And now, here's the host of On Screen and Beyond, Brian Zemrak.
Today on Screen and Beyond, our guest has worked with the Parsons Project, Rick Wakefield, Jimmy Page, Fish, and Elton John. And in the 70s, he was the co-founder of the band Pilot, and he gave us the hit song Magic, which we hear a variation of the song now on commercials for Ozempic. It's David Paton. David, welcome to On Screen and Beyond.
Hi, Brian. Nice to meet you. Nice to be here.
David, I was on the air playing your song back in the day, and it was such a great song, Magic. That was the one in the U.S. anyways that was the one that really came out. What was it like for you back then?
It was like being in Disneyland. It was just, everything was really exciting. Everything I turned to. It was just over the top, and kind of got swept away with it all a bit. We call it living the dream. I suppose that's what we did with Pilot. We lived the dream, and it was not all plain sailing for me. I wasn't comfortable with it at all. I'm quite reclusive, so to be forced as the front man of a band, my face everywhere. I couldn't walk along the street. I couldn't go for meals. I couldn't go to the pub. It was all that kind of stuff that just interfered with the happy little life that I had before fame struck. But I adapted, and I began to enjoy certain aspects of it.
Yeah. And can you believe that it's 50 years ago?
It is hard to believe, isn't it? I didn't think that magic is still known, so it's had that longevity with new kids, 11-year-old kids, and I've had a lot of interest in it. So I can't believe I wrote that song 50 years ago, and there was nothing contrived about it. It just came out the way it came out.
Yeah, and now you co-wrote that, right, with one of your band members?
No, I gave Billy Lyle a credit because. But we kind of wanted to emulate the Beatles in a way. Mm-hmm. Magic was recorded in Abbey Road Studio 2, for instance. And they were always Lennon McCartney, no matter who wrote what, it was always Lennon McCartney. So we wanted to emulate the same thing. And we did that for the first album. We called everything Paton Lyle, regardless of who wrote what. But I wrote Magic. And on the second album, we split it so that when January came along, it's just David Paton.
Yeah. Wow. And now, how did that song come about, Matt? How did Magic come about? How did it evolve in your head? What is your writing process?
It's never consistent. Sometimes I can come up with a line in my head and it leads to a song. Sometimes I'll sit at the piano or sit with my guitar. With Magic, I was sitting at the piano and I had a portable recorder on top of the piano, and I was just sitting playing, and everything I wrote that day, I recorded it. It might have just been 4 bars, but I recorded it. And it just so happened that Magic was one of these little 4-bar sections, and it was just that chorus. Oh, ho, ho, it's magic, never believe it's not so. I thought, that's really nice. I'll record that. And that's what I did. And then a few days later, I had to get up really early in the morning. And just as the sun was coming up, and I woke my wife up by mistake. And she was the one that said, "I've never been awake to see the daybreak." And I thought, that's a good line. That's a song. I seem to be that way in these days. I could pick up on anything anybody said. It became a song. So I thought that's going to work well with that little magic chorus that I just wrote. So there was the verse. "I've never been awake to see the daybreak." And that was how the song came into my head. And I started to picture the whole thing. I could hear the la la la's. I could hear the hand claps. I started to play a guitar solo, and I thought, this is going to work great. I just couldn't wait to get into the studio to do it. And lucky enough, I was in the studio within a week recording Magic.
Wow. And now that song, all these years later, in what I think it was 2018, you get a call from, I don't know what the company is, Ozempic or whatever company the name it is, but the product is Ozempic. Were you surprised when they called you and said, hey, we want to use this song, and also you sang it, right? The Ozempic song.
Well, this is surprising because they've been using it since 2019, and they were using session players to sing it. It wasn't me originally.
Oh, okay.
It wasn't until this time last year, 2023, that they contacted me. Of course, I was well aware of it. It's not publicized as much here in the UK as in the States, but of course I was aware of it. My publishers let me know what was going on initially, but they didn't contact me until 2023, and they put the proposal to me, and I thought, that's a great idea. They said, "We'll take you to Abbey Road, Studio 2. You can re-record it again, just exactly as you did 50 years ago." And the whole idea appealed to me. I thought it was a great idea. And I went along with it. I took my wife down to Abbey Road. We had a fantastic day with the whole crew. They had the lighting crew, sound crew. They had the whole lot there. And it was just a fabulous day.
Wow. I mean, and to go to Abbey Road Studios, now you'd been there before when you recorded and things, but what's it like when you get in there? I mean, can you feel the presence of all the different people? I mean, of course, the Beatles, but so many other people have recorded in there. It just must be amazing to be in there.
It's quite stunning. It's quite overwhelming, really. It was for me, because we initially signed with EMI Records in 1974. And of course, we chose EMI because they owned Abbey Road Studios. So that was the record company I wanted to go with. And just when they said, "Right, we've got your dates ready," and I just could hardly contain myself, knowing that I was going to actually work in the Beatles' workshop, basically. And when we opened the doors of the studio, I think we all got down on our hands and knees. This is wonderful. And there was even things still there, like the mellotron that they used for Strawberry Fields. There was congas, they used bongos, all kinds of things lying about that I recognised from things like the Beatles Monthly, which was a booklet that I used to buy. I could recognise all the things that were in the pictures in the book. So it was a great thrill. And then to actually start recording and walk up to the control room and listen to the sound of Pilot, that we were making together, that was thrilling as well. With Alan Parsons producing, I must add.
Yes, actually, Alan's been a guest on my show many years ago. We've been doing this 17 years, and I think he was probably about year number 5, 6, 7, somewhere around there. But he was very interesting to have to talk.
Yeah, of course, he's had a lot of experience. And he's an interesting guy to talk to.
Yeah. Now, David, being a rock star, I mean, really, you were back in the 70s there and everything. When you got to Abbey Road Studios, did you turn into a fanboy? And actually, did you go and walk across the street where the Beatles Abbey Road album picture was taken? Did you ever do that?
Well, yeah, of course. It was part of my journey. I used to take the tube train to up to Abbey Road. So I would walk past McCartney's house. I
Uh-huh.
knew exactly where his house was, and then across the crossing. So I would do that twice a day. And I worked in Abbey Road for a period of maybe 10 or 12 years with various artists. And so it became a kind of home from home, but it was still a thrill to walk up these few front steps and open the door, walking into Abbey Road. That thrill never left me. It's always, and when I went back with the Ozempic folk, it was there, just as strong as ever. It's a wonderful feeling to think of the people that have walked through these doors and recorded in there. It's just amazing.
Yeah. Now, what I found amazing too is the fact that when you recorded here almost 50 years later, you recorded it to so it says Ozempic. You sound the same. I mean, so many people as they get older, of course, their voice changes and the octaves and all that other stuff there that I don't understand changes, but you sound the same when you're singing that song.
I'm delighted to hear that. It was a struggle. I'm used to doing a little warm up before I sing, especially a song like Magic, because it's way at the top of my range. And with what was going on in Abbey Road with a lighting crew there, sound crew, everything was going on. And I thought, where am I going to go so that I can do my warm up? Because it's quite an embarrassing thing to do your all this stuff, So I didn't do my warm up. And then I started to sing and I thought, oh my God, I'm never going to reach this. But as I sang it over and over a few times, my voice began to warm up. And I must confess, it is a semitone lower from the original recording.
Oh, really?
I find it very hard to sing in the key of G now. So I sang it in F sharp.
Oh, well, I tell you, it sounds the same to me.
Well, that's great. I'm delighted with that. And I'm sure Ozempic are as well, because they wanted, the reason they asked me to do it is because they wanted the Oh Ho Ho Ozempic to sound like the original recording. And they got that because, well, I played bass on the original recording. I sang, I played guitar. So, it was only piano and drums that I didn't actually play. So when you hear it, I'm sure it sounds very original, which I'm delighted with.
Yeah. Wow. Now, when you're doing something like that, trying to get the same sound that you had back in the 70s, it's got to be difficult, though, isn't it?
Very. Oh, very. Because of the amplification that we used then, had an Ampeg amp way back 50 years ago. I had an orange amp for the guitar, and I just didn't have that for the re-recording. Mm-hmm. But we do have technology where we can replicate these sounds as close as possible. So it was a little bit of a struggle, but you get there, especially the engineer that I used. He was just so spot on. And as I say, the technology that's available, we can get pretty close to it.
Yeah. Wow. Now, you mentioned the Beatles a couple of times. And did you ever get to meet them or work with any of them?
I worked with Paul McCartney. I sang on Mull of Kintyre.
Oh, wow.
And he just came into the studio one time. We were recording a Alan Parsons Project album, and the door opened and Paul McCartney walked in and said, I know there's some Scottish voices here, and I'm doing a song. It's very Scottish. I'd like you to sing on it. And if you sing on it, I'll give you a little dram, he said, a little drink. Yeah, so we were all delighted to do that. And that's one of these moments where you want to pinch yourself, because I'm standing there with McCartney. We've all got our headphones on and we're all singing Mull of Kintyre. And I kept looking at him, I was just overwhelmed. This is my hero here, and I'm singing on one of his songs. It's the kind of thing you dream about.
Oh, I can imagine. Jeez. Yeah. And now you play bass. Do you consider bass as your primary instrument?
No, I took up guitar when I was 11 years old. I went on a vacation with my family to Spain. And it was during the time of the running of the bulls through the streets in San Sebastian. And the bulls came, and I took refuge in a shop doorway. And as the bulls passed and all the noise and commotion died away, I could hear a guitar playing. And I looked, and there was a young lad my age sitting on a windowsill, and he was playing Spanish guitar. And I just sat down on the sidewalk and listened to what he was doing. And I thought, this is what I want to do. At last, I found something that I want to do. So I rushed back to the hotel and told my parents I wanted a guitar. They bought me a Spanish guitar. It went in a cardboard box in the hold back to Edinburgh, and it made it in one piece. And that was me. That was I was dedicated to the guitar then. I was never dedicated to schoolwork in the way that I was to guitar, because I felt that I was really achieving something with a guitar. I very quickly managed to get a tune out of it, and that was just so satisfying to be able to do that. So I started with the guitar, and my first band, I was the lead guitarist. My second band, the lead guitarist. It wasn't until just before Pilot when I joined another band, and there was a guitar player, but he said he was willing to play a bit of bass. So we swapped. We would do one song with me playing bass, another song with me playing guitar. And eventually I just swapped to bass completely when Pilot began. In fact, we were auditioning bass players and guitar players when Pilot recorded their first album. We were just a three-piece band then. We didn't have Ian Bairnson, who eventually joined me in the Alan Parsons Project. So yeah, it was then that I decided I would be the bass player and Ian Bairnson would be the guitar player. And he was a very fine guitar player.
Yeah. Now, I did some research, and is it true that you at one time were part of the Bay City Rollers?
It's true. I was the lead guitarist for a period of about a year. But I must say, there was a lot of guys in Edinburgh went through the Bay City Rollers. It wasn't a steady lineup back then before they became famous. And in fact, it was only the Longmuir brothers that I knew that went on to become famous. The other members, I didn't know at all. Mm-hmm. I just knew the bass player and the drummer. That was all.
Yeah. Any regrets that you didn't stay with them?
Initially, when I did leave them, that they were going to sign with Bell Records. And I thought, this isn't the path I want to take. I don't want to be in a teeny bop band that weren't writing their own music. I wanted to write my own songs, and I could see the record company wanted to promote the Bay City Rollers as a teeny band. And I thought, no, that's not for me. I was listening to Genesis and King Crimson and Yes and bands like that, so that's the way I saw myself going. Although Pilot are probably a million miles away from that. But, we were writing our own songs, and we were well respected as musicians. And that's exactly what I wanted. So Pilot was really what I wanted. And I was lucky enough to get it. And I could have left the Bay City Rollers and gone into oblivion for things happen like that. So I was lucky.
Yeah. Yeah. But it still must be when you see somebody that you were a part of a band, and then you see what, they come up with this big hit. It's like, shoot, I wish I'd stay, at least for that part.
Exactly, because I was playing in a nightclub for 6 nights a week when the Bay City Rollers were in the charts. Yeah. And I did get a few people saying, oh, you made a big mistake there, David, didn't you? Yeah, but as I say, I was lucky. I wrote Magic,
Yeah, I mean, yeah, Magic is just it's magic. I mean, and to come back after all these years, and I mean, everybody knows the song. Whether they know the original song or the variation for the commercial. I mean, it's just it's a feel good song.
It is. And it reflects my personality. That's the way I am. I don't have any regrets about anything. And I tend to be optimistic a lot of the time. So I think that optimism has been captured in Magic. It's a happy song. And at that time as well, there was a lot of songs that mentioned the word love. And I thought, I'm going to write a song that avoids that word love, and so I did it with Magic. So, it's every songwriter's dream to write a number one. Although Magic wasn't my number one, but January was. It was number one all over the world except for USA. I think it got to number 58 or thereabouts in the Billboard chart. Yeah, but I achieved that as a songwriter. And then as a musician, I think the ultimate was joining the Elton John Band and being with him for 3 years. So, yeah, I count myself as very lucky in being able to live the dreams that I've lived. And because it's every musician's dream to do what I managed to achieve.
Yeah. Now, you have an accent. Of course, I have an accent, depending on who's listening. We all have accents. But when I notice when a lot of times when groups from Great Britain sing, they sound more, I don't know if you want to call it American or whatever, but was that an intention, or is that just the way you sing?
It's just the way we sing. I think it's because when we listen to American music in particular, you go way back to blues music, where it all comes from. It was all Black Americans that were singing this stuff, and the accent was just suited that kind of music. And when Elvis came along, he would sing black music and he would sing with an American accent. So, when we listen to even people, the pop stars of our day in the UK, they all sang with an American accent. You do get the exception with a band like the Proclaimers, but right. That really is an exception. And for us, it just makes us smile to hear a Scottish accent being sung. But it doesn't really suit the kind of music that I'm writing. I'm influenced by the Beatles. The Beatles were influenced by the Temptations and all bands like that, So I think it's because it evolved from America that we all sing with an American accent. I think even ABBA, who are Swedish, they sing with an American accent too.
Yeah. Well, I remember when they came out with their songs, they could not speak English. They only Swedish is all they could talk. And,
I heard that.
Yeah. And they sounded like they could speak English easily.
I heard that when they did the Eurovision Song Contest, I don't know if that's known in the States, when they did the Eurovision Song Contest and they sang the song Waterloo, when they did the rehearsal, they sang it in Swedish. It wasn't until it went out live to the rest of the world that they sang it in English. They must have been told, it'll be better if you sing it in English. So, yeah.
Wow. Going back to your early childhood, when you were just a little kid, is music what you wanted to do, or did you want to be a soccer player or whatever?
I don't think I had many ambitions until, as I said earlier, I reached the age of 11. But I was fascinated by music. I remember when we had a babysitter for me, and I must have been maybe 10 or 9 years old. And the babysitter, she was a policeman's wife. And she said, "Do you want to listen to some music?" She says, "I've got some music." And she put on Elvis. And I remember she had all the Elvis albums. She was a real fan. And I remember just sitting there for the whole evening and we just played Elvis and I was fascinated. So I think it's always been there, that's something, there's been a trigger there all the time, just waiting for that Spanish guy sitting on his windowsill playing his guitar.
Now, when you've written a song and it turns up on soundtracks, now you were on Happy Gilmore soundtrack and probably others too. Do they have to ask you to use that, or do they just use it and then you start collecting everything?
No, they have to. Well, I'm signed to Sony Music Publishing. They have to get permission from Sony Music. Sony Music, if Sony Music think it's a bit controversial, they'll get in touch with me, but they're not obliged to do that. They just do that to let me know. But it's going to be used for whatnot. Whether I have an opinion on it or not, I don't know if they'll take any interest. For instance, cigarettes or alcohol. Do you mind if your song's used in Japan to sell magic cigarettes or whatever. I mean, I've got no qualms about that. I don't think my song is going to encourage anyone to start smoking. So there's things only if it's controversial,
Yeah.
and also there's been various versions of Magic. Even Selena Gomez had a minor hit with it as well.
Mm-hmm.
I like that version. There have been some versions that I thought, oh, this is really, really bad. Florida, for instance, he did a version of it. That was pretty good.
Really? I didn't hear that one.
It was good. It did pretty well too. But I get presented with that from my publisher. They'll say, what do you think of this version? And I'll listen to it. And I honestly say to them what I think. If it's a load of nonsense, I'll say, I don't understand using magic in a rap song. I just don't get it. So, but I don't think they pay any attention to me. They just humor me.
Yeah. Well, yeah, because a lot of times now you have in the background a song generally from the 70s. They do that a lot, because let's face it, some of the best music is from the 70s, the 60s and 70s music, those are all used in rap songs and commercials like crazy.
I agree.
Yeah. But there's a reason. They're catchy. They sound good, and not all songs, but most of the ones they use in commercials sound, it doesn't, it doesn't date the song. The song doesn't sound like it's from the 60s or 70s. Like, Magic. It's just always, it's just a song that's good.
I think I was born in a good era and having good influences with all that Tamla music and there was lots of good influences then. And I think a lot of writers, when they're writing a song, their influences come out in some way. And maybe listening to Magic, you hear a little bit of the Beatles influence from me, La La La's, things like that. That's great, but there are bands that I like nowadays, but they tend to sound more like bands from the 70s than the new stuff that all has the 120 beats per minute. I can poo-poo that, whatever, but there's a lot of good stuff. The stuff that I like is stuff that people haven't heard of, like the Brothers Landreth. That's a band that I really like, but they're playing music that could have been written in the 70s or the 60s or whatnot. Just good bands. Good. If music's good, performed well, written well, I'll enjoy it.
Yeah. Well, David, our time is getting toward the end here, but I would like to finish up with one final question. Actually, two parts, but one question. But people should go out and do you have new music out or anything? Are you doing any new music? Do you tour or anything like that?
I constantly put out albums, and I'm 3/4 of the way through another album that I'll have out by the end of this year. I know it's going to be called Communication because I've written the title track. I've also written a book that's out, and the website davidpaton.com gives a lot of information.
Great. And like you said, did you guys ever tour the United States?
No, unfortunately, we were mismanaged. Our managers were empire building, I suppose. So we were kind of neglected. The things that matter were neglected. So we didn't. We only toured UK.
It's funny because I've interviewed a lot of different, rock and roll people from the 60s and 70s, and a lot of them have the same problem. I mean, even the Beatles were mismanaged. They were having problems, and it's almost like that was the norm, that the management was screwing over the people.
That's true. It's true. I just see it as part of the apprenticeship. You live and learn. You can get bitter about it and you have a grudge. I don't see it that way. I just see it as a learning curve, and you learn as you go. That was early days, and we learned a lot in these days, which took us to where we are now.
Yeah. Well, the final question is, taking us away from all your music, magic, and everything else, when you sit back and relax, what do you enjoy on TV? What's your favorite TV shows now and of the past? And what are your favorite movies now and of the past?
Oh, I watched a movie. It's maybe 4 or 5 years old now. It's called Coda.
Mm-hmm.
Coda. It's about deaf people.
Yes.
That film just blew me away. I just thought that was wonderful. I like the tearjerkers, you know, and I watched Wonka recently, and I thought that's a great film. It's not the kind of. It was because my grandson came up, and I said, "What would you like to watch?" Oh, I'd like to watch Wonka, and I sat with him and watched it. I couldn't take my eyes off the screen. I thought the music was great. I thought everything was great about it. So that's the kind of thing I'll watch.
Yeah.
I'll watch It's a Wonderful Life at Christmas time. I think a lot of us do.
Yes. Classic.
I like
Yeah.
that kind of thing. And as for music, well, I like bands. You know, I can mention a band called Wolfpack. A lot of people don't know this band, but they're so good. They're a New York band. They're just brilliant. And I've mentioned they're called Bros Landreth. That's another band that I really like. I love listening to great musicians, good bass players. I'm always into bass players. And just music that's performed well, especially live, watching a live performance. I love all that stuff.
Yeah. I've been watching, I don't know if you've seen this show or not, Outlander.
Yeah.
And I don't know if they filmed it in Scotland, but it is beautiful scenery there. It's just amazing.
I believe a lot of it was shot in Ireland.
Oh, in Ireland. Yeah.
As well as Scotland. Yeah. But I've watched a couple of episodes. I've enjoyed that. It's interesting.
Yeah, I just enjoy the scenery of it. It just looks so beautiful. You know, someday I'm going to go there. You know, go to Scotland, go to Ireland, and see everything.
I recommend it. Apart from the weather, I recommend it.
Well, David, I cannot thank you enough for taking the time to share with us. And I've enjoyed your music, you know, ever since you started. And I thank you so much for everything you've given us.
Thank you, Brian. It's been a pleasure talking to you.